I never thought I'd find myself in a situation like this. Honestly, I thought I knew Lauren better than anyone. We had been together for nearly 10 years, married for 5. We had our ups and downs, sure, but I always believed we were solid. That was until I started noticing little things that didn't add up, things that seemed insignificant at first but quickly snowballed into something I couldn't ignore. It all began about 6 months ago. Lauren had always been a little temperamental, bitchy, even, but lately she'd become downright hostile. Every time I asked a simple question or tried to talk about our plans, she snapped at me like I was the problem. She started staying out later than usual, claiming it was just work or friends. I didn't buy it right away, but I kept quiet. I figured maybe she was stressed or just going through something, and I didn't want to make a big deal out of it. Then came the nights she'd be working late and wouldn't return until the early morning. Her phone was glued to her hand whenever I tried to look at it, always with a new password or a different lock screen. She'd brush me off when I asked about who she was talking to, saying I was paranoid or that I was inventing problems. She'd lie and deny everything, but I could see her eyes flickering with guilt. Something wasn't right. The real shocker hit about a month ago. I was at home, just relaxing after a long day, when I noticed her phone buzzing nonstop. I decided to check it out, something I normally wouldn't do, but I couldn't shake the feeling that she was hiding something. I went into her messages and saw a string of texts with some guy named Ryan. The tone was flirtatious, suggestive even. My heart dropped. I read a few of the messages and it was clear they'd been more than just friends. They were clearly having an affair. The worst part was, Lauren had lied about everything. She said she was going out with her friends that night, but instead, she was sneaking around with Ryan, supposedly a client of her cousin's or some bullshit excuse she'd told me. I couldn't believe I'd been blind to it all. How had I missed the signs? The late nights, the secretive behavior, the way she'd dodge my questions. It was like she'd been living a double life right under my nose. I felt sick. Angry, yes, but also betrayed in ways I couldn't even put into words. The woman I loved, the woman I trusted with everything, was screwing around with someone I didn't even know, someone who was supposed to be just a friend. And the thing is, I found out not because she told me, but because I looked. That's what hurts the most. I wasn't even supposed to find out this way, but her actions left me no choice. I saw the evidence with my own eyes, and it shattered everything I thought I knew about her and about us. After I saw those messages, I was in a daze. Everything around me seemed to blur. My stomach was twisting, my mind racing, trying to process what I'd just uncovered. I didn't want to believe it at first. Maybe it was some kind of mistake, maybe I was overreacting. But then I remembered the way she'd been acting, cold, defensive, avoiding my gaze, and I knew deep down it was real. Lauren was cheating on me and she'd been doing it for months. I decided I couldn't just brush this off. I had to confront her no matter how much it hurt. I waited until she got home that evening, trying to keep my composure, but inside I was boiling. When she finally walked through the door, her face immediately told me everything. She looked guilty, caught, and annoyed that I'd found out. I didn't waste any time. I told her I knew about Ryan, about her lies, about everything. Her reaction was exactly what I expected, defensive, bitchy, trying to spin her way out of it. "Oh, so now you're spying on me," she snapped, brushing past me to get to the kitchen. "You think I'm cheating because I wanted a little fun? You're so damn boring, Jason. Maybe I deserve to have some excitement." I couldn't believe the audacity. She lied, she cheated, and now she was calling me boring. That was her excuse. I felt a mix of rage and sadness. I asked her how long this had been going on. She threw up her hands, rolled her eyes, and said she'd gotten bored with our marriage, that I was too controlling, too predictable. She insisted it was just sex, that Ryan was just a distraction, and that she didn't mean for it to get serious. I wanted to scream at her, tell her how much I loved her, how betrayed I felt. But I also knew I had to keep my cool. I asked her why she didn't just tell me, why she had to sneak around, lie, cheat. She shrugged, smirking in that way only a bitchy woman can when she thinks she's got the upper hand. "Because I knew you overreact." Honestly, I didn't think it was a big deal. It was just sex, Jason. A way to feel alive again. "You're so serious all the time. I needed something different." That was the moment I realized that Lauren had become someone I didn't even recognize. She had this nasty attitude like she was the victim, like I was the one in the wrong for catching her. She kept insisting she was justified, that I was too uptight, and that she deserved to do whatever she wanted. That's when I felt the first pangs of regret, not because I thought I could change her, but because I loved her, and now I was questioning everything about us. I told her I needed some space to think. I didn't sleep that night. I kept replaying everything she'd said, trying to understand how she could throw away everything we had built. And I knew deep down that if I didn't do something, she'd keep lying, keep sneaking around, and keep hurting me. I've always believed in fighting for what's right, but with her, I wasn't sure anymore. I wondered if I should just walk away, or if I could still salvage whatever was left of our marriage. That was the night I realized my world had just changed forever. The days that followed were a hell of a blur. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat properly. My mind kept circling back to everything I'd found out, every lie she'd told, every time I'd been blind to what was happening right under my nose. I kept asking myself if I'd missed the signs, if I'd been stupid for trusting her so blindly all these years. Honestly, part of me wanted to break down, just collapse and cry, but I held it together. I knew I had to think clearly, plan my next move. Lauren, of course, didn't make it easy. She continued to act like she was entitled to everything, like I was the one overreacting, the one who was making a big deal out of nothing. She started throwing cheap shots, calling me controlling, insecure, paranoid. She'd say, "You're so freaking obsessed with what I do. Maybe if you paid more attention, I wouldn't have had to look elsewhere for some excitement." Her attitude was bitchy, dismissive, like I was the one in the wrong for catching her cheating. One night, she came home late again. I was sitting on the couch, trying to keep myself from losing my mind when she stormed in, drunk, acting like she didn't give a damn. She started yelling at me about how I was ruining everything, how I wasn't fun anymore, and that she needed her freedom. She kept saying she didn't want to be tied down, that marriage was just a cage. That's when I snapped inside, realizing she'd been playing me all along. She didn't care about us. She just wanted her cake and to eat it too. The thing that really pushed me over the edge was when she admitted, in her drunken rage, that she was planning to leave. Me, yeah, she said she was tired of my controlling ways, tired of the marriage, and that she'd found someone better. That was a punch to the gut I didn't see coming. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach and all the air left my lungs. She laughed, slurring her words, and told me I was too much of a waste of time to keep around. I knew then I had to do something drastic. I couldn't let her walk out and leave me with nothing. I started thinking about how I could make her pay, how I could make her realize what she was throwing away. It was like a switch flipped inside me. Anger, betrayal, a desire for revenge. I wasn't just going to let her walk away and pretend this didn't happen. No, I needed to show her she couldn't screw me over and get away with it. That's when I remembered something I'd come across when I was digging through her stuff after she left her phone out one evening. I'd seen a bunch of emails, some pictures, and little snippets from her affair with Ryan. But I also found a series of texts and recordings from the hospital from when I was in a coma after my accident. Turns out, during my medically induced coma, the monitoring equipment recorded some unauthorized stimulation testing. Apparently, my neural bypass surgeon, Dr. Carter, was experimenting with nerve stimulation during my unconscious state. I guess he was trying to see how much I could feel, even if I wasn't supposed to. What's more, Lauren was involved in that testing. She'd been there in the hospital during those sessions. I never suspected anything at the time because I was still unconscious, but now I realized she was there, watching me, maybe even encouraging the testing. The thought that she was feeling everything I couldn't while I was completely helpless made my blood boil. It made me realize how deep her betrayal went, not just with Ryan, but with everything I thought I knew about her. That discovery changed everything for me. It wasn't just about cheating anymore. It was about how far she was willing to go, how much she'd betrayed my trust in the worst way possible. I started to see her for who she really was, bitchy, manipulative, and selfish, willing to do anything to get what she wanted, even if it meant hurting me in the process. I knew I had to be careful, plan my next moves, but one thing was clear. I wasn't going to let her ruin me without a fight. Now, with everything I'd uncovered, her affair, the hospital recordings, her involvement in my nerve stimulation tests, I knew I couldn't just confront her blindly. This was deeper than just betrayal. It was a calculated, cold betrayal that touched every aspect of my life. My first instinct was to gather evidence, to build a case that would leave no doubt about how completely she'd screwed me over. I started digging through her emails, her social media, anything that could confirm her lies and give me leverage. In the process, I found a lot more than I bargained for. There were messages from Ryan where she'd openly flirted, even discussed meeting up again, despite her, just a distraction excuse. But what really got me was the recordings from the hospital. I had no idea she'd been there, watching me, feeling everything I couldn't feel during those sessions. It was sickening, the thought that she was there, passively witnessing my helplessness and probably enjoying it in some twisted way. I started to think about what I wanted to do with this information. Part of me wanted to expose her to everyone. I wanted her to feel the shame, the guilt, the way she made me feel. But I also knew that wouldn't fix anything, at least not right away. I needed to be strategic. I wanted her to understand that I knew everything, that I'd seen the evidence, and that I wasn't going to let her get away with this. One night, I set a trap. I knew she was planning to meet Ryan again. I made sure I was home early, hiding my phone where she couldn't see it. When she arrived, drunk again, she started spinning her usual lies, trying to deny everything. I played her own messages, her own words from the hospital recordings back at her. Her face turned ghostly pale. She was caught completely off guard. She stammered, tried to lie her way out, but I wasn't buying it anymore. I told her I knew everything. About Ryan, about her presence during my coma, about her involvement in my nerve stimulation testing. Her reaction was breathtaking. She got furious, screaming, calling me paranoid, jealous, insecure. She said I was making up wild stories, that I was crazy and needed help. She tried to turn it around to make me the villain, saying I was just angry because I was weak, because I couldn't control her. That's when I saw her true colors. She wasn't just a cheating wife. She was manipulative, cold, and utterly selfish. She tried to gaslight me, but I had enough. I told her I was done with her lies, her games, her betrayal. That night, I packed a bag. I couldn't stay in the same house, knowing what she'd done, knowing how deeply she'd hurt me. I told her I was leaving, that I needed space to figure out what I really wanted. She yelled, begged, called me crazy, but I shut her out. I knew I couldn't trust her anymore, not with my heart, not with my life. My mind was made up. I was walking away from that house, from her, from everything that had become a nightmare. In that moment, I felt a strange sense of relief, mixed with a dark numbness. I'd always believed in our marriage, believed in her, but now I saw her for who she really was. The betrayal cut so deep that I wasn't sure I'd ever recover. As I drove away that night, I realized something. I'd been a fool for trusting her so blindly. Now, I had to rebuild myself piece by piece and learn how to live with the scars she left behind. The days after I left her were the hardest I've ever experienced. I felt hollow, like I'd lost a part of myself that I'd never get back. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face. Anger, defiance, that bitchy smirk she always wore when she thought she was getting her way. But beneath all that, I also saw pain. Not just the pain of betrayal, but the pain of realizing I'd been so blind, so trusting her to the point where I ignored the signs until it was too late. I threw myself into work, trying to distract myself. But the truth was, I couldn't escape the thoughts swirling in my head. I kept replaying everything, her lies, her cheating, the hospital recordings, her involvement in my nerve testing. How she watched me, feeling everything I couldn't. That sickening detail haunted me. It made me question everything about her, about us, about trust itself. One night I finally sat down and looked through all the evidence I'd collected. The emails, the recordings, the texts. It was like a puzzle coming together, piece by piece. I realized how calculated her betrayal had been, how deliberately she'd kept me in the dark. She'd lied to my face, manipulated me, all while secretly betraying me behind my back. The more I saw, the more I knew I'd never forgive her. Not really. Maybe I could pretend, maybe I could move on, but deep down I knew the damage was done. I decided I had to take action. I couldn't just walk away and pretend it never happened. I needed to make her pay in some way, not with violence but with the truth. I wanted her to see that I knew everything about her affair, about her involvement during my coma, about how she betrayed not just me, but everything we built together. I contacted a lawyer, started gathering legal documents, and planned to file for divorce. I also reached out to the hospital where I was treated to notify them of her presence during my neural testing, something I knew would blow her cover entirely if she tried to deny it. Meanwhile, I kept myself busy, trying to regain some semblance of normalcy. But every so often, I'd get a flash of anger, a wave of sadness, and a deep sense of loss. The woman I thought I knew was gone, replaced by this cold, manipulative stranger who had lied and cheated her way through our marriage. I realized I'd been in love with an illusion. The Lauren I'd known was just a mask, one she wore until she didn't need it anymore. One particular afternoon, I got a call from an anonymous source. It was someone from the hospital who had been contacted by the medical team about the nerve stimulation recordings from my coma. They wanted to talk, to give me the whole truth. That's when I learned that Lauren's involvement in my testing was even more detailed than I thought. She had been in the room, watching me, feeling everything and even encouraging the doctor to push the limits. The betrayal cut even deeper. She had been there, complicit in a process that was supposed to be about my recovery, but instead it was a sick game she was playing. Honestly, I felt like I was living in a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. My mind kept racing. How could she do this? How could she be so cruel? The pain, the anger, all swirled inside me like a storm I couldn't tame. I realized that moving forward meant I had to somehow rebuild my life without her, without the woman I'd loved for so long. I knew it wouldn't be easy. There would be days I'd want to break down, days I'd regret everything. But I also knew I couldn't stay trapped in this endless cycle of betrayal and hurt. So I made my decision. I was going to fight for myself, not just by filing for divorce, but by making sure she wouldn't get away with what she'd done. I'd exposed her, showed her true colors, and now I needed to heal. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew I had to focus on me, on my recovery, on my sanity, on rebuilding a life that wasn't tainted by her lies. It's been a brutal ride, and I still have days where I question everything. But I also know one thing for sure: I'm done being a victim. It's time to take back control. Looking back now, I realize how much this whole ordeal has changed me, maybe in ways I didn't even expect. The betrayal cut so deep that I thought I'd never recover, but somehow I'm still here. I've learned that trust is fragile, and sometimes people will destroy it without a second thought. Lauren's actions showed me how toxic someone can be when they're only out for themselves, willing to betray everything and everyone in their pursuit of pleasure and selfishness. Getting out of that mess wasn't easy. There were nights I second-guessed everything, wondered if I was making a mistake, if maybe I should fight harder to save what was left. But deep inside, I knew I had to let go of that hope. Holding on to her, hoping she'd change or come back to her senses, would have only kept me trapped in a cycle of pain. I had to accept that some betrayals run too deep, and forgiveness isn't always an option. The divorce was finalized a few months ago. It was messy, full of legal battles and emotional outbursts. Lauren tried to spin it like she was the victim, accusing me of being paranoid, insecure, controlling, classic deflections. But I knew the truth, and I refused to let her gaslight me anymore. I moved out, started therapy, and focused on my recovery, both physically and emotionally. I had to rebuild my sense of self piece by piece. One thing I've come to realize is that betrayal doesn't just damage the relationship, it damages your trust in yourself. I spent a lot of time questioning whether I was naive, whether I missed signs, whether I should have seen her true face sooner. But now I see it differently. I see that I trusted her because I believed in us. That's what decent people do. And her betrayal was a reflection of her own flaws, not mine. This experience has taught me a lot about human nature, about the importance of setting boundaries, and about never ignoring the red flags. I also learned that revenge isn't about hurting her back. It's about reclaiming your peace of mind and dignity. I've started focusing on myself, on my health, on my future. I've found new hobbies, reconnected with friends, and even started dating again. Carefully, cautiously, learning to trust again, but never blindly. Looking back, I wish I could tell myself to see the signs sooner, to be more cautious. But I also know that no one is perfect and that sometimes love blinds us. What matters now is that I'm still standing, stronger than I thought possible. Lauren's betrayal was a dark chapter, but it became a catalyst for me to rebuild my life on my own terms. So if there's one thing I want anyone reading this to take away, it's this. Trust yourself, listen to your instincts, and never ignore the red flags. When someone shows you who they really are, believe them. Because in the end, the only person you can truly rely on is yourself. And though betrayal can shatter you in ways you never imagined, it also gives you the chance to rebuild, better, stronger, and more aware than ever before.